Hi everybody, my name is Ellen from the Trailhead Homestead and welcome back to On the Garden Path, a series where we take you all over Alaska and other places in the north to explore community gardens and other cooperative agriculture systems. This episode, we're going to Seward Community Garden by the Bay. And it really is by the bay. It's only a couple hundred feet from the Alaska Sea Life Center and the ocean itself. Though it's windy and rainy, the locals have figured out how to protect their plants and grow pretty big harvests for the local food bank. I'm so happy I get to show you their hard work. Let's go! Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're here with Callie at the Seward Community Garden by the Bay. I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for meeting us. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your role in the garden and what you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today. Nice to meet you guys as well. My name is Callie, and right now my role with the community garden is as the treasurer. This community garden was built in 2017, and at that time I was one of the founders and was the chair of the garden for the first 5 or 6 years. Yeah.
Okay, so your role has changed a little bit over the years?
Yeah, so I've been happy to hand off some of the duties to a previous chair who has now stepped away, and now we have a new person in the chair role. So we've got a great leadership team.
Great.
Yeah.
So in that, the beginning of your project, tell us a little bit about how this project got started and how it's developed.
Yeah, so back in fall of 2016, we had a project put on by an organization called the Seward Prevention Coalition titled Seward Strong, and it was where anyone in the community could come and bring an idea of something that could improve the quality of life in Seward. And I attended that, and I brought the idea of a community garden to the event, and there were lots of people there with all sorts of neat ideas, but this one was chosen to get $2,000 in startup funding through Seward Prevention Coalition, and then from there the organization kind of coalesced around it. We got a larger grant and we built the following spring.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So is the structure of the community garden, is it a nonprofit? Or is it government funded?
We have a fiscal sponsor, which is now the Seward Prevention Coalition, and they are a 501c3. Okay. So we're kind of underneath their umbrella. As far as ongoing funding, we don't have any ongoing funding source. We sustain ourselves with the membership dues that folks pay to be a part of the garden every year. So we had, a big chunk of funding at the beginning to get everything built, and then we've been sustaining for 7 years.
So what were the main motivations for you bringing a community garden to the table? Why a community garden?
Yeah, well, I moved up from Washington State in 2011, and at that time there is another little pocket community garden at one of the local banks, and I think it has about 10 beds, and there was, always a waiting list for that. In Seward, just in terms of our geography, we're on what's called an alluvial fan, which means basically if you dig down a couple inches, you hit gravel right away. And so most people do not have good growing soil where they live. If you're a homeowner, maybe you've brought in soil and developed your yard, but especially if you're a renter, there really isn't any easy means of gardening unless you're going to build your own raised bed, which isn't necessarily realistic for people to do. And so, going back to where I came from in Washington, everybody has gardens. That was a big part of my upbringing and my life before I moved up here. And so it was kind of what I was bummed on Seward about. And I kept thinking, maybe someone will start a community garden. Wouldn't that be great? And then I think I had this kind of aha moment where I was like, maybe I have to do it. So once we had the initial support, right, it was really neat to see so many people come together and say, yeah, this is a good idea. Yeah, people should, have more ability and information and access to growing their own food. Then it became a matter of finding a site, and this garden is on University of Alaska Fairbanks property. So this is part of the UAF campus here in Seward, and we just feel so grateful to have gotten their approval to have a land use agreement with the university.
Now tell me a little bit about how do the day-to-day responsibilities and chores that get done? Do you have responsibilities that you require from your bed renters?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here at the garden, we have 30 total beds. 5 of those are grown by our leadership team for the donation to the local food bank. And so we have approximately then 25 members. Most of those are individuals. In the past, we've had some nonprofit groups and organizations that have, worked together on beds, but I think this year it's all, individual community members or families or groups of friends who have the beds. And so, yeah, if you're going to be a member of the community garden, you need to commit to coming to at least one work party, which typically those are in May and June. Then as far as ongoing maintenance, we have our members split into groups of 4, and then every week one of those groups is on maintenance, and that looks like watering the areas that are like the communal areas. The pathways are the main areas that need weeding, so that's kind of the weekly maintenance stuff. It's all volunteer, so we're a completely volunteer run organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned very briefly about going to the community bank, the community food bank with some of your produce. How does that get taken care of once it's ready?
Yeah, good question. So our food bank coordinators take the lead on the food bank beds. We have been doing this long enough that we've had good conversations with the food bank about what sorts of stuff people are excited about receiving in terms of produce that's grown and donated. So we try to focus on stuff that people like, and then stuff that grows well here too. We do really well with brassicas. It's pretty cold and rainy. We definitely aren't growing any tomatoes or cucumbers outside or things like that. And then the food bank coordinators every week, they do a harvest, because we have one day that's like the food bank distribution day. And so, ahead of that day in the morning, they harvest and walk it over there. Everything in Seward's close together, so pretty convenient in that way. And then that's how it goes. Yeah.
Great. So with the food bank, you mentioned there are popular foods. What are those popular foods, and about how much of it gets donated to the food bank every week?
Yeah, well, I don't have a weekly count for you, but across the course of a season, we're typically donating about 100 pounds of produce to the food bank. You can't necessarily tell from this shot, but our beds are not especially big. So typically in a given year, we have one 3x12 that's for the food bank, and then we have a few of our 3x3 size beds that grow for the food bank. And then in terms of stuff that is popular, carrots, radishes, peas are all popular, and those all grow really well here. Lettuce is popular, broccoli is popular. We also grow, lots of kale and donate that because it grows really well here. Maybe not always a fan favorite, but definitely nutritious and delicious if prepared well.
So you mentioned very early on when you got started, you got a quick grant to get it going. How much does it cost maintaining it year to year, and how much do people pay to rent these beds? How does that work?
Yeah, so our initial grant funding, which was in 2017, covered the construction of the garden, and so that was all the lumber for the beds and the initial, soil that went into the beds. And then we have weed barrier here under our gravel, and then gravel, and we also had to clear the site. So there were definitely some initial costs. Then in terms of the costs we've had since then, mostly it has been to improve our soil. We found that the soil that we got was pleasantly boring, right? Like it just was really kind of devoid of
that
anything.
Life that you need.
Yes, yeah. And so in our first year, we were just thrilled to get soil in the beds in time for people to grow, because it is like from the time the snow melts until you really want to be planting, not that much time. So in that first year, things did okay, but we've really done a lot with soil amendments since then. And so that's really our biggest ongoing cost. And we buy those from, a garden supplier in Anchorage. In terms of like the actual cost, our membership dues are for a large bed, which is 3x12. It is $50 a year. And for our smaller beds, which are 3x6, it's $35 a year. I can't do the math in my head on what that comes out to, but we have been able to sustain our bank account right at, kind of a level that we're comfortable with that. And so, yeah.
What have been some unexpected positives and unexpected negative things, really real drawbacks that you have not foreseen in the development and running of this garden?
Unforeseen positives. I mean, I think that it's not really unforeseen, but it really is a place that brings people together. I run into people all around town who talk about how much they like popping by the garden on their walks and seeing what people are growing. It's really nice running into other gardeners when you're here harvesting and just meeting and talking with new people. Maybe an unexpected benefit and drawback is that it's both. That Seward has a lot of turnover, and so at this point I would say we have almost completely cycled through our original members. I think it's just me and one other woman who have been members since 2017, and all of our other beds have turned over, some 2 or 3 or even 4 times. I don't think that is because people are not liking gardening. It's really either people have moved away from Seward and so obviously aren't gardening anymore, or have enjoyed gardening so much they've found some, way to garden at a different location. And then in terms of a drawback, this is a very windy location. We knew that when we put the garden here. We're only about 200 feet maybe from the bay, and in the afternoons we tend to get a pretty strong south wind, especially when it's sunny out. And so a lot of these beds, well, less of them right now because we're pretty late in the season, but earlier in the season a lot of people keep their plastic on. We have these little low tunnels on the beds, and I think even more than being for temperature, it's kind of for wind protection, and that you really do see people's stuff that's got the covers on it growing quite a bit taller. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you seen a positive impact on the users' mental health, individually or as a community?
Oh, that's a good question. I certainly know that it brings me a lot of joy coming here to the community garden. I can walk here from my house, and sometimes late in the evening after my kids are in bed, I will pop over here and check on my carrots and thin them or see how they're doing. And so I really enjoy being able to come here and just have the quiet of that. I can't necessarily speak to anyone else, but I would say the feedback we get is consistently really positive about how much people like coming here and being a part of this.
Do you have any advice to give to somebody who wants to start their own community garden in their own community? What few pieces of advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Seward, there was definitely the will to make it happen. We logged, hundreds of volunteer hours in that first 6 months. It definitely was a lot of people, a lot of effort, and getting the funding was a critical first step, but finding a location went hand in hand. Nobody's going to give you funding if you don't have land to put it on. So doing that due diligence early to figure out where you could do it, and expecting that process to take time from the time that we reached out to the university to when we had a signed land use permit was probably between 5 and 6 months. So it's not something, especially if you're working with a city or state agency, that's going to happen quickly. Mm-hmm. And then anticipating things like needing insurance. That it might seem like, oh, it's just a garden, but if you're on someone else's property, they're probably going to want you to be carrying liability insurance. So there's a lot of costs and things that aren't about growing things at all that go into it. But I think if you can find a strong group of people that's passionate about making it happen, then you'll end up with people with all sorts of different skill sets, and getting it out of the ground is the first step, and then the second step is sustaining it. And that it can take time to find people who don't only want to garden, but who want to take an active role in maintaining a garden, in terms of a leadership role. And that finding that is really important, because it isn't something that one person can really run by themselves, especially if it's a volunteer-run organization.
So if people want to contact you to learn more about how your garden works and maybe get some advice, can they contact you, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so we are on social media. The garden is called Seward Community Garden by the Bay, and we have a Facebook page and an Instagram. So you're welcome to message us there. And then by email, the best way to get a hold of us is our Gmail, which is Seward Gardens, SEWARDGARDENS @gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm out of questions. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with people in the audience? What's your favorite things about the garden?
Yeah. Well, I just love this garden. I feel so happy that it has served the role it aimed to fill. I love being here, and yeah, feel very grateful for the garden to have found its people. And yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us and making it down here to the garden. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch you on the next garden.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you like this video, then like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us reach more people who will find this information helpful. We do all of this work out of pocket, so if you want to support us and make sure more of these videos get made, check out our merch store and buy one of our eco-friendly t-shirts or sweatshirts. All links are down in the description below. Thanks again, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye!